You're listening to Autumn on the Air, the weekly podcast that brings you conversations about the impact of research commercialization and the people who make it happen. Join us for interviews with patent and licensing professionals, innovators, entrepreneurs, and tech transfer leaders on the issues and trends that matter most. Keep listening for an inside track on the people, IP policies, and politics changing our world.
Welcome back to another episode of Autumn on the Air. In today's episode, we're shining a spotlight on trailblazing women who are breaking barriers and driving change in their fields. Today, we're thrilled to feature a guest who embodies the spirit of innovation and leadership, Dr. Andrea Choe. Andrea is the CEO and co-founder of Holoclara, a biotech company transforming how we treat allergies and autoimmune disorders. While pursuing her PhD at Caltech, Andrea discovered a unique pheromone language shared by roundworms, which led to insights in evolutionary biology and immunology. Today, her research forms the backbone of Holoclara's mission to provide relief for millions suffering from allergies and autoimmune disorders. Welcome to the podcast, Andrea.
Hi, Lisa. So great to meet you, and thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being on the podcast. And we have a really interesting topic to talk about today, which is worm-derived therapies and Holoclara. So I thought maybe the best way to start this podcast off was for you to tell us a little bit about this unique pheromone language that you discovered in roundworms and what the moment was like for you when you actually made this discovery.
Yeah, thanks for asking about the roundworms. Another win for the roundworms when anyone asks about the worm.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, my thesis when I was a graduate student at Caltech was on understanding the evolution of molecular communication between worms that have evolved hundreds of millions of years diverged from each other. That's actually what drew me in. I just thought it was fascinating that one, that existed, and two, I could access them through a freezer in the laboratory, right? So that led to this discovery that they had this shared, unique pheromone language. And then from there, it was really a Radiolab podcast that helped me think about, this idea of a therapeutic effect, because people had long been looking for something therapeutic that worms could be secreting. So then I thought, okay, well, we have now this Rosetta Stone of worms. Could it be that there's something there? And that was the first embarking on that adventure, getting on that roller coaster, and we've just been going since.
It's pretty amazing. I read something that you had said. You mentioned that I think it was before the 1900s, there was no really allergies or autoimmune diseases. And you think that might be because of roundworms. And that was one of the motivating factors based on some of the research you did as well.
For sure. I think it was very rare before the 1900s. There are some cases where people had them, but it cannot explain, just for example, knowing more about the disease and having better diagnoses does not explain the massive rise that we're seeing and continue to see to this day of allergic and autoimmune diseases. So then when you look at areas of the world that still have gut roundworms, they have the least incidence of allergic and autoimmune diseases. So that's part one, right? Is could there be something there? Part two is just the tremendous amount of study and inquiry that's gone on in this space, both with human studies and very tightly controlled preclinical studies in the laboratory that show that there is something there.
Andrea, I wanted to ask you about your company's name, Holoclara, which reflects the idea of completeness. How does that philosophy influence your work?
It's my driving philosophy in life, first and foremost. I don't know why, but have you ever watched that movie Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yes.
Yeah. So there was it was a genetic project where Arnold was raised on an island by all of these incredible teachers. He knew 12 languages. He had his own karate teacher. There's this idea of knowing as much as you can, as broadly as possible, has always been my dream. If I could, I would get more degrees and study languages and all of that if I only had the time, right? So to me, I just fundamentally believe that having this multidisciplinary approach to anything is always the best. So I think if you now fast forward to drug development, you actually cannot afford to leave out a single player. You need clinical experts, drug development, pharmacology, regulatory, as far as the eye could see, you need that whole village. So if you're missing a component, the whole thing could fall apart. And so it's the same way, I think, with the human body. We're missing a key component, which is the worms. And we've just been doing our best to live without it.
It's going to be really fascinating to see where that all goes. And, your company is turning complex biological discoveries into really amazing practical treatments. Talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you face in making this leap.
I mean, you name it. Every challenge that you can think possible, we've gone through it. It's just, like I said, from clinical, from strategy to regulatory, everything that, as a scientist in a lab in academia, you're really focused on looking down into the microscope, and now you're looking up. And also, I was finishing the last two. The discovery happened before I finished my MD PhD program. So I had 2 clinical years where now I was interfacing full time with patients and hearing their story and their unmet need and how they're treated within the system. All of the challenges, access to care, all of those things are now at my forefront. I can't afford to ignore them. So I think that every possible challenge that we could think of, from going from your insular environment where you now have the luxury to explore something in a petri dish, to looking up and out, to building the team to get this across the finish line, all the way through to the patients and how to get it in their hands and their experience. Every single thing is a challenge, which I don't mean to. I almost feel like it sounds like I'm complaining about it by calling it that, but it's just milestones is another way of thinking about it, right? Like every hurdle, every milestone possible.
Yeah, definitely. And, like I mentioned, they're complex discoveries, and trying to get them into practical treatments is definitely challenging. And, I want to go back to something that you mentioned, which is that allergic and autoimmune diseases are on the rise globally. And there are a lot of treatments out there for both of those right now. So what makes your approach unique compared to some of these already existing and maybe even traditional treatments?
That's a great question. And if you look at the landscape right now, I see 2 major classes of treatments. One is the biologics approach, which is you understand as much as you can about the molecular pathway. You pick a target, you make an antibody against it, and you take it down. Then the other side of that is steroids. So then you just take everything down. And what's in between? The in-between space has been really hard for people to play with. It's either this one or everything. And as we're learning, it's not really serving everyone in a lot of ways. For example, eosinophilic esophagitis. This affects children. And so can they really be on steroids their entire childhood developmental life? No, right? We already know that this impacts and impairs their development. And then there's the biologics approach where you take something down. Well, guess what? We're learning that not all diseases are driven by the same molecule. And, it's not there. Even, for example, in the indication I'm speaking about, eosinophilic esophagitis, there have been massive failures in that space because everyone banked on specific proteins being responsible, and they're not. So I think what we're offering is something that's in that in-between space that co-evolved with human biology and is able to work with the immune system rather than against. So I think that's what we're offering. We're not offering an iteration on an existing space. We're trying to bring forward an entirely new class of medicine.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic because, I think one of the other issues, particularly in my experience with autoimmune diseases, is when you use the biologics, it will work for a while and then you build up some type of tolerance and resistance. So then you've got to switch medication. And, that's always difficult for the patient involved as well.
Completely.
So I want to talk a little bit about your discovery engine since it's central to identifying therapeutic compounds. Can you share a little bit about how that engine works and why it's a game changer?
Yeah, I think I guess it links to the previous question. I think it's the game changer because, again, we're not trying to do something where it's based on one piece of the dial or taking everything down. It's something in between that's working with the immune system. I think that philosophy in and of itself is a game changer, this idea that we're trying to offer a new class of medicine. But I think to answer your question about the engine itself, it's really trying to find what it is that worms are making, because first of all, there's a lot of them. Second of all, they've been with humans a very long time, a very, very long time. I'm not sure how much of human evolution is taught in classrooms, but we have human ancestors that have been evolving for 5 million years. And I can't remember a history book that went before the Egyptians, maybe is the earliest time period that we were ever taught. And then as a child, as my son loves, dinosaurs, right? So I think that it's almost so hard to wrap your mind around the fact that these worms have been here as long as dinosaurs. That's the other piece of this is I think that's where the game changer is we're just trying to find stuff that's been around for a long time that nature's already innovated.
Yeah, that is pretty amazing when you think about that. They've been around before the dinosaurs. It's pretty incredible. We've talked about roundworms, but I'm curious, I'm assuming you're looking at other worms besides roundworms. I would imagine that some worms haven't been around as long and haven't gone through as much evolution as maybe the roundworms, but are you seeing similar types of effects with some other, maybe more recent worms as well?
Well, I can say that we are certainly looking at the worms. What's so interesting is I was actually talking to somebody end of last year who's like, what is a worm? I was like, you know what? I think it's actually a colloquial term, right? Like when you see something squiggly looking, it's not a phylogenetic term. Like it's not a term that helps to define the clade. It's actually a colloquial term. So in that way, we're certainly exploring other worms that are known to be therapeutic.
Interesting. It ought to be fascinating to see what you see on that front as you're exploring other types of worms. And, you mentioned being at Caltech and getting your PhD, MD dual degree. And I wanted to ask, since a lot of our audience is tech transfer professionals, about your experience with tech transfer and collaboration between Caltech and industry and ultimately how that shaped Holoclara's path.
Yes. So I can say that I've worked with Tech Transfer Office both at Caltech and at Cornell at an institute, Boyce Thompson Institute at Cornell. And tech transfer offices are really the gateway between innovation in universities and industry. So, that is a relationship that we have to always respect and understand in order to make sure that we're having we always want a symbiotic relationship, right? Much like the worm and the immune system. We're looking really only to maintain symbiotic relationship. And also because we continue to work with people. I'm still working with people at Caltech all the time. I'm actually still pulling in new people from Caltech, and we're building the company and we're bringing in other people. So I think the Tech Transfer Office, they have the rubric for how we can have good guardrails to protect both that individual and the company and the entire institute. So I think that they're really critical to continuing to go back to the ecosystem as well.
Now, we touched on the regulatory aspect a little bit. And as you know, new therapies often come with challenges when it comes to regulatory approval. So how are you approaching and navigating the regulatory path?
We are listening to the FDA guidance. First of all, I will say, we have studied every possible avenue from generally regarded as safe to FDA, from supplement to medical food to IND enabling. So this is a space where, if you're going to follow the path of the FDA, you just follow the guidance, right? You don't mess around there. I think we also have our regulatory experts that help us with that, in addition to all of the published guidelines. For example, we have a former chief counsel to the FDA, Peter Barton-Hutt, is on the Holoclara board.
Interesting. And I think I read as well that you're looking to develop these therapies. Mainly they're small molecules, so they would be something that would be orally administered versus maybe peptides and other things that go by injection or infusion or something like that.
Yes, I think that that's really where we want to start, because being orally available, right? The current options for kids with eosinophilic esophagitis is an injection that they have to get every week, right? So if we can make something, I guess it's more like, if you can make something that's orally available, safe, tolerable, and effective, why not?
Why not? Right. It's better than having to go to the hospital and get an infusion or use an auto injector, maybe like with some of the current autoimmune treatments and things like that, which, you might get pretty good at administering yourself, but you're still going to have those reactions at the injection site, which are never fun for anybody.
I already have to bribe my toddler to get his winter flu vaccine, right? So I know how hard it is on parents.
Yeah, it's extremely difficult. And you mentioned about some of your team there, and I wanted to ask you about them because you've really assembled an amazing world-class team of scientists and advisors. How did you approach building the right team there at Holoclara?
Well, I would say there's the team, the roles themselves, and then there's the types of people, right? So the roles, I would say half of it is R&D. We're discovering, we're always building. That's a non-negotiable. That's always been a part of who I am as a scientist, and that's just going to be a part of Holoclara. The other part is the clinical development side. So we have a team of both full-time and part-time clinical experts here to help us as we're going through trials and developing further. Now, in terms of the type of person, we're looking for humble, hungry, smart. We're looking for people that, are looking, it's not startups are never a traditional 9-to-5 job. So you have to really show up every day asking, what is it that the company needs today? It's a really humbling position to be in. And I think being really passionate about the mission and believing in it, those are also just non-negotiables. So I think that's what's pulled me into each and every person here. I love our team so much, and I think all of them really, carry that with them.
So I'm sure you get the question a lot that, using worm-derived therapies is unconventional. So how do you address those questions around this type of innovation?
I would say, isn't innovation by definition supposed to be unconventional?
Exactly.
Isn't that inherent in what the mission of innovation is? Let's just not do something the same anymore. What is innovation? It just cannot be iteration, which there is a time and place for that. And it's great that people are doing that. That ain't me. So I think that innovation really needs to have that outside the box, unconventional approach to unlock something new that people really need.
So what excites you the most about your company and the impact that potentially your therapies could have?
There are so many things that excite me about the potential here and what Holoclara can offer to this world. I truly believe that worms and these secretions that we're finding are intended to be part of the human immune system, that they are a part of the human molecular legacy. To be able to return that back in and now see how people does it allow us to now thrive once we have these missing pieces now incorporated? That's super exciting to me. And it really goes all the way to the patient level, because I'm on the Facebooks for all of these patient advocacy groups. Every day I scroll and you see the same stuff about parents, how, tips that they need to get through these difficult times with their kids, these like kind of chemical smoothies that they need to take. And I think I would love to one day scroll through that and see, oh my gosh, my child is thriving now because they're on this medication. Or my life experience is better now because they're on this medication. that's the moment that I'm waiting for.
That's incredible. And I would imagine there's applications for some of your compounds and things that you're looking into beyond just allergies and autoimmune disease.
How could you not, right? It goes so far into human health. I mean, there's also metabolic health. It's also, stem cells. There's fertility. There's a paper where women in a tribe that had a type of roundworm or had higher fertility. It's so far reaching, right? But, with any hand that goes into a cookie jar, you can't grab everything all at once. So we're trying to thoughtfully grow to where we can be most impactful.
Absolutely. And then finally, Andrea, I wanted to ask you, what keeps you motivated personally? You're obviously very busy. You mentioned you have a toddler. You have a very ambitious and innovative mission. So what keeps you going and what motivates you?
No, I don't have a good answer for this one because I just think I'm always motivated. I think I was born that way. I think it's not just, there's nothing that really interests me. It's mostly I'm really interested in something. I'm very, very interested in something. So I just think I'm naturally wired in that way to really be motivated, to think about something, to tinker, to figure it out. But like I said, the North Star is always the people at the end of the day and seeing if this can really help them and change their life and change their quality of life. And not just in small ways, but all the small ways add up to chronic debilitating diseases. A lot of times we're focused on these questionnaires that they have to answer in clinical trials to say, how is your experience for this symptom today? But when you're in family medicine, those are not the types of questions that are asked. It's now you're following them 5 years, 10 years out, and you get to see how it's really impacting their overall quality of life. And I think those are the moments that I'm really interested in seeing at the end of this.
Well, congratulations. It's absolutely incredible technology. And I wish you and Holoclara all the best. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. That was such a pleasure to talk to you. Great questions. I had a lot of fun chatting with you.
Likewise. Thanks, Andrea. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story. It's truly inspiring to see how you've combined science, medicine, and entrepreneurship to pave the way for new treatments that have the potential to change countless lives. For our listeners, if you want to learn more about Andrea's work and Holoclara, be sure to visit their website at www.holoclara.com. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Autumn on the Air. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with your colleagues. Until next time, stay inspired and keep making an impact.
Thanks for listening to Autumn on the Air with Lisa Mueller. Get social with us and share your thoughts. You can tweet us at AUTM or visit us online at autm.net. We'll be back next week on the air. Be sure to join us.